Are you tired of feeling frustrated because you can't seem to pick the right strings? Well, you're not alone. I've seen hundreds of students struggle with this and they have a hard time advancing because of it. So I'm going to show you an easy fix that will help you pick the right strings without having to even think about it. So what's the one trick that's helped me the most with this? Think about it like drawing. When I'm drawing, I keep my hand planted down because it helps me be a lot more accurate. So one simple thing you can do is just put this part of your palm on the bridge so you always have your hand anchored down. Just make sure it's not too far over this way or you're gonna mute the strings. So when I'm playing scales, patterns, and soloing type stuff, I almost always keep my picking hand anchored down somehow. Now, there are some times where this won't work, but let me show you another way that you can approach this first. Instead of putting my palm on the bridge, sometimes I'll put it here on the body of the guitar if I'm playing closer to the neck. Or I'll even just rest my palm on the low strings if I'm playing something on the high strings, and then slowly move it down as I get lower. Another thing you could try is think about your little pinky like a kickstand and keep that planted down, or even plant all three of these fingers down on the body of the guitar. Sometimes I do that, but the palm on the bridge usually seems to be the most comfortable for me, but just mess around with it and see what works best for you. Now, some of these techniques might feel a little weird if you've never tried them, so just take it slow. And one thing I like to do is take your other hand completely out of the equation so you're fully focused on your picking hand, and then try putting the other hand back in there once that's solid. So how do you get to the point where you're not having to even think about it? I'll get to that in a second, but first let me show you how to approach this if you're picking chords. So the same concept will work with that too. You can put your palm on the bridge, or sometimes I'll plant my pinky down on the body, or even just rest it on the high E string like this. Now, obviously, if you need to play the high E string, you'll have to take it off. But just experiment with that and see what feels the most natural for you. But another super important thing that you really need to keep in mind is you really need to keep your motions very small. It's gonna be a lot easier to be more accurate on what strings you're hitting if you have tiny little movements. So in order to get to the point where you're not having to think about it, let me give you an analogy. When you first learned how to tie your shoes, you had to really think about every single step slowly. Cross the laces, go under, make a little bunny ear, go over, then under with the other lace, etc. Or maybe you're a weirdo and learned how to tie your shoes a different way. But the point is, when you first started to learn how to tie your shoes, you had to go slow and think about every step, but over time, you just repeated it so many times that you trained your brain, and now you can do it without having to think about it. So right now, you might have to look at your picking hand and really think about hitting the right string each time, but after enough repetition, you'll eventually train your brain and develop the muscle memory you need so you can do it on autopilot without having to look. Okay, so now when does anchoring your hand not work? One example of when it won't work is, let's say I wanted to do a riff, but instead of sounding like this, I'm going for something more like this type of sound. In that case, I'm going for a really aggressive sound, which I can't really get if my hand's planted down because I want to hit all 6 strings, but I'm using my left hand, either my thumb or these fingers, to just mute the strings that I don't want to ring out. And also, if you struggle hitting the wrong strings when you're strumming chords, like on an acoustic guitar, this won't really work either. I don't like strumming with my palm planted down, and I would advise not doing that because it just restricts your movement. So when I'm strumming chords, again, I do a lot of muting with my left hand to just avoid hitting strings that I don't want ringing out, but that's a slightly different topic. But that one little trick of anchoring the hand down has really helped me and my students be a lot more accurate when picking. All right, now I want to hear from you. What's the hardest thing about learning guitar for you right now? Let me know in the comments. I hope this video helped, and I'll see you soon. Peace.